Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much. Uh, it's great to see two of my old friends here, Mr. CKG Nair and Anand Bajaj. Thank you, Mr. Nair, for giving this opportunity, and thank you, Anand, for your kind words. Uh, I also convey my um, regards to all the distinguished panelists who are here. Uh, this is, to begin with, a very, very good opportunity and much appreciated initiative by NISM. Uh, During the course, while I speak, I will make it more clear why I say that this is a very, very important step and a very timely step which NISM has taken. And I'm happy that our old friend Mr. Nair uh, has devised this kind of a course, which is very much required in India. Uh, Anand has spoken about our FATF membership, and the membership itself, uh, everybody realizes, is not the end game, because every country and all the stakeholders of the country need to keep pace with the ever evolving FATF standards. So, from what we had as 40 plus 9 when we were last evaluated in 2009-10, now in 2012, the FATF recommendations have undergone a change. So, from 40 plus 9, it became 40 recommendations. All the 40 plus 9 got subsumed in the 40 recommendations. But what has added more rigor and robustness is the criteria of effectiveness. So now the countries are not only evaluated on the 40 recommendations, but also on the 11 immediate outcomes. These 11 immediate outcomes relate to the effectiveness of having implemented the laws and the rules and other bylaws to effectively mitigate the risk of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing. Now, as over the years, the standards have continued to evolve, newer threats have been detected, and risks need to be mitigated. So we have a whole lot of ideas and issues that have now crept into the recommendations since 2012. So we have the whole humongous kind of guidance and documentation which has been done on proliferation finance. When in 2012 the proliferation finance was brought into the ambit, it was said to be a standalone kind of a criteria. But over the years, now it creeps in and has more or less the same importance and the same amount of expectations from the countries as we have for terrorist financing and money laundering. FATF recently, over the last 2 years, has done a lot of work on virtual assets, service providers, and virtual assets. And in fact, a few months back, they have released their final guidance on virtual assets. So these are the ever-evolving nature of the FATF recommendations, which are making things even more difficult and challenging for the countries to comply with. India has to again undergo its mutual evaluation, which is getting postponed due to the global pandemic. As per the original schedule, our mutual evaluation should have been completed by now. But due to the postponement, we were given a date of commencement from September 22, but that is also likely to be further postponed because there are 4 countries which are ahead of India and their mutual evaluation has still not been completed due to problems relating to visits by the teams to various countries who are under assessment. And therefore, this is also another factor why I say that this is a very important and a timely course which has commenced. Because with this advantage of some additional time that we get, we can have more and more compliance people trained, and for a better effectiveness of India's AML CFT framework, as we call it. I would agree with Mr. Vishwanathan when he talks about compliance being a full-time job and a full-time profession. The FATF recommendations have a lot of depth in it. and are very nuanced, which actually requires a lot of competence and expertise to be developed. And there comes the role of the compliance team and the compliance officers. This is a knowledge-based game. This is not some cursorily you can go through it and achieve something. And that is what at FIU India we have been emphasizing amongst our reporting entities, that we need quality STRs. We don't need quantity. We need quality STRs which can be used by the law enforcement, which can help in our analysis, and which can actually lead to cases of money laundering, predicate crimes, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing. We see that the reporting entities who have actually invested in their compliance team, there is a marked difference between the quality of the reports being filed by them and those who have not taken it seriously and have not invested. So those who are laggards and who are lagging behind face not only criticism, but also some kind of compliance action. Because what we find is that a number of such reports are filed after the offense has been detected by the law enforcement, or is reactive in nature because the law enforcement has already issued notice to the reporting entity seeking details. The investigations are on, and it is only then that they wake up. They could not realize what is going on. Now, this could be one because there is a lack of knowledge, which leads to lack of appreciation. They are not aware of the modus operandi, or they don't think it is something which is actually to be reported. One instance we find very common, which again is majorly due to lack of knowledge about their own responsibility, is that they feel that, well, the proceeds of crime have been generated in another financial institution, or for that matter, in another financial sector. It has been layered through the banks. So it is the responsibility of the banks to report, and that the reporting entities of the capital market are somehow exempt from it. Now, this is creating a lot of problems, and it is actually leading to ineffectiveness on part of the reporting entities from the securities market. So what we have, as Mr. Anand Bajaj has said, that India's capital market is of a global quality, both in terms of its expertise, its regulations, and also in terms of the volumes. So when India is evaluated, it is not going to be a case where we can pass it off by saying that, well, this is a sector which is hardly important. So when we look at some of the recent figures that somehow I have seen, is that in May 2021, India's market capitalization crossed $3 trillion, and India became the 6th largest stock market. In 2021, which has been a stellar year for investors in Indian securities market, India is rated as one of the best performers among the top 15 markets in 2021. There has been an increase of 71% and 87% in trading value in capital markets and equities, futures and options. These figures show that the trading activity has increased during the times of pandemic. Although over the years we have seen more and more retail investing taking place, but COVID-19, we see that has given a required push to bring in young investors from all over the country to the financial markets. In the post-pandemic period, active investors account has increased by 10.4 million in India, and retail stock ownership in 1,500 plus companies listed on NSE rose to 9% in the third quarter of 2020. What is even more interesting and important is that we see a surge of investors from tier 2 and tier 3 cities and towns. More investors are coming in from smaller towns. And this year in 2021, companies have raised about 1.08 lakh crore through IPOs. Now, this is a robust market. This is a booming market that we have, which is actually we should be proud of and very good for our economy. But on the other hand, when we look at the mechanisms that we have, the robustness that we have on the effectiveness and tracking down suspicious transactions, we feel that there is a lot to be done. During this year, since April, FIU India has received about 2.46 lakh STRs from all reporting entities, out of which only 4,500 odd relate to the securities market. Now, as we always say that there can be two sides. One is that our securities market and the intermediaries are so responsible and the markets are so well regulated that there is no money laundering, no terrorist financing which is taking place. And the other one, which appears to be more convincing, is that we lack somewhere. And that is, we lack in the compliance part of it. Now, the FATF recommendations apply equally to the securities market apart from the banking institutions. While we find that the banking institutions and the banking sector has matured over the time with acknowledged responsibilities and the roles that it plays, we find that the security side has somehow lagged behind. And as per the FATF, the security sector is one of the core industries through which persons and entities can access the financial system, which provides opportunities for criminals to misuse financial system. And there are two major risk factors in this area. Number one, we need to see how criminals might be able to use securities to launder money and finance terrorism. And secondly, how illicit funds can be generated through fraudulent activities. The securities market poses significant challenges because new products and services are developed constantly in relation to investors' demand, market conditions, and advances in technology. Product offerings from this sector are vast and many are complex, with some devised for sale to general public and others tailored to the needs of a single purchaser. We must also remember that the security sector is perhaps unique amongst this industry in that it can be used both to launder illicit funds obtained from elsewhere and also to generate illicit funds within the industry itself through fraudulent activities. Having said this, it is therefore very important that we have a class of compliance officers who are well trained and who are dedicated to their work to detect the suspicious transactions that are taking place or wherever they find that they have suspicion in any of these transactions. So therefore, firstly, the market participants need to fully grasp the meaning of a suspicious transaction, which I think this course will endow them with. And apart from giving rise to reasonable ground of suspicion that may involve proceeds of an offense specified in the schedule to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act or involve financial activities relating to terrorism, it covers any transaction that causes a reporting entity to have a feeling of apprehension or mistrust about the transaction, considering its unusual nature, unjustified complexity, or having no economic rationale or bona fide purpose. All such transactions fall within the ambit of suspicious transactions. Reporting entities are obliged to assess the suspicion according to a risk-based approach for customer due diligence, real-time payment screening, transaction monitoring, and behavioral monitoring to identify changes in respondents' transaction risk profile. Secondly, a lot of reporting entities from this sector are perhaps not aware that all offences under Section 12A read with Section 24 of the SEBI Act are scheduled offence under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Thirdly, the market participants suspecting that placement or layering may be occurring elsewhere in the financial market or the trading chain believe that a submission of their own STR is unnecessary. And this is one of the biggest challenges as well as the biggest misnomer which most of the intermediaries carry. We see on a daily basis a number of reports that we get from SEBI where penalties have been imposed for various violations and including insider trading. But the intermediaries have simply not filed any suspicious transaction report on that. Now, this is something which is very easy for the reporting entities because once the SEBI has initiated action, at least then they can have their eyes and ears open and start looking at those transactions. And where they feel that, yes, it is actually suspicious, they could have filed the reports and saved them from compliance action by FIU India. But that is something surprisingly which is not happening. From this sector, we also find that the alert closure is something which is done without much application of mind. The stock exchanges are giving alerts, and most of those alerts are closed by the intermediaries. The basis of closure of alerts at such great numbers is something which needs to be looked into also by SEBI. Then the STRs which are to be submitted to FIU, there should be not only reasonable suspicion, but they should be timely so that they can be used by the law enforcement authorities, because the compliance function and the compliance team, they are the first responders, or they are the first ones who come to know that what is happening. And therefore, their responsibility and accountability is much higher. And where they are informing and filing reports in a timely manner, and where they are actually proactive, that has earned them a lot of appreciation and laurels. While those who are lagging behind or are not actually conscious about their role and responsibility are facing a lot of flack, which, in my view, is not good for our economy as a whole, because we cannot have a system where the nudge is only due to some penalty or compliance, and that is not a very good way and of maturing our economy and dealing with things. At this juncture, because the securities market is a very specialized and a nuanced market area, FIU India has initiated the revision of red flag indicators specifically dedicated to the sector, in which we have put in a team comprising of officers from SEBI and also from various intermediaries to have their idea and to make the red flag indicators more viable. And we can also have thoughts and where the market players are informing us of the modus operandi and how to make it much better. At the same time, FIU India had initiated a major upgrade in its IT setup. So we had the FinNet 1. The FinNet 1 is now being transformed and upgraded into FinNet 2, which should go live latest by March or April next year. This would give a lot of ease of filing for all kinds of reporting entities, as well as, more importantly, it would be giving a risk scoring for all the reporting entities regarding their compliance, and that risk reporting and that risk rating would be conveyed to the designated directors and the principal officers of every reporting entity on a monthly basis, asking them to improve their systems and to improve their compliance. We are at a juncture where a better compliance would go a big way in cleaning up the economy. And this is not just a global responsibility, but also something which is on the priority of the government. We are fortunate, I must say this, that at this juncture, the two major regulators, the Reserve Bank of India and SEBI, are headed by officers who have led the Indian delegation to FATF. Mr. Shaktikant Das has also led the Indian delegation to FATF, and Mr. Ajay Tyagi for a very long time has led the Indian delegation, and they are fully aware of the requirements and what are the obligations. We have, as I said, a kind of a asymmetry today between the banking sector, which is considerably much more matured, much more proactive, and much more interactive, with much lesser resistance in improving their quality of filing. And that is what has, in fact, led to a lot of successful investigations being conducted by different law enforcement agencies. And I hope that this e-learning course would go a long way in bridging the knowledge gap, especially for the securities sector, and make the compliance officers more comfortable, confident, and more proactive in complying and filing the reports which are of quality and in a timely manner. So once again, I would thank Mr. Nair for having given me this opportunity. Thank you.